is the dreaded dialogue, and being able to write realistic and sharp dialogue. And so one any help you can give us to help dialogue in the world would be but also to talk on the nose dialogue, which when I wrote my first few screenplays, it was horrible. I would get that note back constantly, be like, dialogues on the nose. And I'm like, what does this on the nose mean? Like, I don't understand I was so ignorant to the process. I didn't even know what So please explain on the nose dialogue, and then how to avoid on the nose dialogue.
Right. Well, I'll tackle your first question because I had a funny remark for that when you said, how do we become good dialogue writers? I was going to say, well, there's a very simple process, but it might require a little bit of surgery, which is go and take Aaron Sorkin's brain and put it inside your skull, and then you'll be a good dialogue writer.
Or Tarantino. Yeah, exactly.
Or Tarantino, exactly. Right. So, but all joking aside, the craft of dialogue is probably the most important thing. Other than theme and scenes and craft of it, whatever, right? So I like this analogy that Ernest Hemingway shared with writers, where he said that a great story is architecture, not interior design, right? So architecture of a story is the structure, the theme, the plot, the characters. It's the foundation of a good story, right? So it's a solid story. Dialogue is interior design, right? So it's all the little color of your walls and your posters, and I'm looking at your room, right? There's a very specific interior design going on, right? That would dialogue be. So you could have a solid house that is standing on its own, but if the room has no good interior design, it's still going to look kind of yucky, right? You're not going to have a good feeling about it, right? If your room was empty. So that's what dialogue is. So you could have a really good script, but with terrible dialogue, it's still not going to create that emotional impact you want in the reader, right? Okay. And by the way, it doesn't mean you're not going to sell your script. It just means they're going to hire a rewriter to do the script. And as a matter of fact, I don't know if you know this, but in Hollywood, dialogue writers are hired at six figures for a couple of weeks' work just to punch up the dialogue, because that's how important it is, right?
So can I stop you for a second? Because I want to make this really clear for people, because this is a wonderful analogy. If you have the most beautiful home designed, mansion, but the interior design is tacky and bad, the value of the entire house goes down.
Yes.
And it's that simple. And I think that's a great analogy for screenwriting. I've never heard that before. I think it's so important, because it is. The house is the foundation with the theme, the structure, the characters. But that dialogue is the painting. What color is it painted? Is it neon? Is it neon green paint?
And I mention that every single time with clients and students, because when I give feedback and something is not working at the foundation level, right? I say, okay, thematically or character or story, something is not working. And they come back to me and say, oh, but what about that little scene where this character says this and that?
That's a nice painting.
Isn't that a big line? And I'm going, yes, it is, but I don't care. I just don't care. You're talking about your house is crumbling, and you're talking about what poster to put in your wall. I mean, come on, right?
That's exactly it.
So that's a great analogy. I love that analogy. Thank you, Ernest Hemingway. But that's the thing. And so writers sometimes do not understand that the foundation has to be solved before they think about the interior design. So, but dialogue is the interior design, and on the nose dialogue, to come back to your question, is probably one of the biggest challenges with writers, because there's different levels of dialogue, right? So there's dialogue, and I break it down into these four categories in my book, which is emotional impact, which is the lines that make you smile, that make you laugh, witty lines, sarcasm, all this stuff. They create an instant reaction, right? So they like, ooh, that was a great line, right? That's emotional impact. Then you have character, which is character voice, which is what the character says, and the way they say it reveals their personality, reveals their opinions, their traits, et cetera, et cetera. So those are character. That's what we call individuality for dialogue. The third one is exposition. And unfortunately, most writers tend to focus on exposition. And that's where you get the on-the-nose claim, right? Feedback. Because exposition is characters saying information that you feel the audience needs to know to figure out what's going on in the scene or in the story. Unfortunately, that's all they do, right? So another feedback you get with dialogue is that all the dialogue sounds the same. All the characters sound the same because it's really just your voice. And all you care about is giving expositions. You don't care about character. You don't care about emotional impact. The opposite of on the nose is subtext. And that's the fourth category. And that's probably the hardest thing to master. It's usually where you get to the professional level and you're a master of dialogue. That's when you get subtext. And that's when the line of dialogue kind of implies things. You don't state it on the nose. On the nose means you're stating exactly what the character is thinking and what he's feeling, right? So I'll give you an example, top of my head. If you're a friend of yours, who you don't really like, comes to visit you, right? And you say, oh, it's you, right? In that, right? We understand that's subtext for I don't like you, right?
But if he says, "Oh, it's you," it's all about performance.
So that would be right. So that would be like the subtext, right? Or so you know what he's thinking, you know what he's feeling, without saying it. Now, a beginner writer who's going to write on the nose dialogue would be, "Oh, I'm really unhappy to see you right now," right? You're stating exactly what he's feeling. That's on the nose dialogue. Right?
So you mean
I'm not happy right now, or I'm so happy to see you. That's on the nose.
So you mean basically The Room? Basically, Tommy Wiseau's The Room is basically the entire movie is on the nose on the nose dialogue, which makes it so beautiful and wonderful of that movie. I absolutely it's one of my.
It's so bad that it's good.
It's one of my favorite movies of all time, purely because it's so bad. And when you said that, I'm like, wait a minute, that sounds familiar. That's like, oh, hi, Tommy. I just walked in the door. Thank you. How was your day?
Exactly.
It is pure on the nose dialogue. Also, another thing, and if I may dissect the room here for a second,
sure.
When you're writing a scene, and I think writers should understand this, is that you really need to pick the most important and interesting part of the scene. Right. So, what a perfect scene is just a wonderful scene in The Room is this scene that they go into a cafe, and the scene starts with two people we have never seen before in our life ordering. I'm going to have a coffee. I'm going to have this. Great. Mm-hmm. Two other people go right behind them in line, order. We don't know who these people are. Right. The third people are our characters, and they order. So you sat there for a minute and a half watching someone else order for no reason, and that's the most interesting part. We should have picked it up at our characters ordering.
That happens a lot. Yeah, in scenes, it's like, what do you cut? Because a lot about our brain just wants to set up the scene, right? So the examples I usually give is like, if you're going to show an interview scene, right? Somebody at a job interview, you're not going to show the guy driving there, or even before, like getting ready for his interview, driving, finding parking, getting up on the elevator, checking in with the receptionist, waiting, reading a magazine until he's called to the interview. You're going to cut right at the interview, right? So that's what it's about.